Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie.
All right, before we get to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I want to say if you are new to the channel and you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please hit the subscription or subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you do get notified when shows come out. We're glad that you guys are here. We hope you enjoy the show, and hope you share it with your friends, because it is how we get the stagecoach across America. All right, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today we are at the Gun Rights Policy Conference in Dallas, Texas, and I have with me Adam Kraut, Lawyer Dog. Adam,
hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah. I thought it was really funny. A couple weeks ago, I got a notification from Amanda Suffolcool, which I want to thank Amanda and Rob from Eye on the Target Radio for letting me use their stagecoach. They're not only good friends, they trust me with their car.
Pretty impressive.
I know, right? This is how you know people trust you. But anyway, so we're using their stagecoach as we're getting along here, and so Amanda sends me a text, and she's like, "Hey, these people want to know why you haven't been on the show, and Adam Kraut is one of them." I'm like, I ran into him in San Diego, and I just said hi to him, and I don't have his contact number. So I'm like, who knows Adam? You know, who knows Adam's number, and how can I get in touch with him? So
Funny story about that. What really happened was the women of the DC Project were down in DC, and they were doing their lobbying thing, and I happened to be in town for an event at Cato where I was getting some CLEs and meeting some people, and I heard they were in town, so I stopped by to say hello. Ended up eating dinner, and while we were eating dinner, they had mentioned Riding Shotgun with Charlie and asked if I'd ever been on the show, and I said, no, I have not. And at that point, that's when that text message was sent to you, and I believe I was not the only one that you were shamed into getting into the car.
So my deal is this: I assume, you know, I know some people, they say that they have the most downloaded show or the most watched YouTube channel. I'm like, I have the least watched YouTube channel, but everyone seems to know who I am. So whatever I'm doing, it's something, right? I guess.
Yeah. Well, hey, maybe it's not all about the views; it's about the thumbnail being viewed.
There we go. All right, so how did you, I learned about your name and learned a little bit about who you are when you were running for the NRA Board of Directors, but before all that, how did you become a gun guy? And you're an attorney, you went to law school. How did you determine to get into two-way stuff?
Yeah, well, that was a random happenstance, actually, to some degree. So when I grew up in a house that did not have guns. Okay. I learned to shoot in Boy Scouts, and down at Camp Horseshoe in Rising Sun, Maryland. First time I ever shot a .22, and I had this stupid grin that never left my face. And I think the year or two after the first time I shot one of those, I went and shot shotgun down there. Mm-hmm. So you could buy tickets. You could do rifle or shotgun merit badge, and then in the evenings you could buy tickets and go to the rifle range and either shoot rifle or shotgun. So one of these years I decided I'm going to go try shotgun. And I remember being, a 13-year-old, maybe a 14-year-old kid, hearing about shooting shotguns and 12 gauge and how powerful it is, being absolutely mortified, right? Sure. So I get up to the line, the range master hands me the shotgun, and I'm standing there, and I just pull the trigger as quickly as possible to get it over with. And he stops me and he looks at me and he says, "You gotta aim." So I found out two things. One, it's not nearly as terrifying as I thought it would be.
Right.
And two, you have to aim. And then from there we started breaking clays, and again, that stupid grin never left my face. So
that's awesome. As
I got older, when I turned 18, it was right around the time the assault weapons ban was expiring. I can remember making my dad stop at a local gun store, going in and getting a Bushmaster catalog and flipping through and going, I am going to buy one of these things. I'm absolutely going to get one.
Wow.
So I turn 18 and I actually go and I buy a Remington 870. .20 gauge, and I still have that gun. I was told to get rid of it. Clearly, that did not happen.
Why?
Well, so parents, I mean, parents were not into guns. They were actually anti-gun. And what I've learned, and we can touch on this in a little bit, but what I've learned is people who have no experience with guns, much like me at a young age, have preconceived notions that are put into their head by what they see on TV, what they read, what people tell them. Yeah. And so that was exactly the case. So I buy the shotgun, was told to get rid of it. I never did. I was turning 21. I went and got a handgun and got my carry permit. And my dad told me that my life expectancy was probably pretty limited. Surprise, still here.
Wow, it's just what you want to hear from me.
Right, yeah.
Not only do I not want you to do this, there's a real good chance you're going to die.
Yes, and so it was around that age, around 21, when I was starting to look in the world and see that there were a couple things. One, it was becoming increasingly more violent, and two, that you actually are responsible for your own safety and welfare. There may or may not be somebody that will be there to assist you, maybe in time, maybe after the fact, but you ultimately are responsible for yourself. Yeah. And so that was really what drove me to that. And in between these, I had bought an AR-15 or built one rather, in between 18 and 21, and kept buying guns. And I don't know, maybe 22, 23, my dad, out of the blue, asked me to take him shooting.
Whoa.
Happy to do it.
Right?
Yeah. So we go shooting.
Did you make him pay for ammo?
No. So I've always had a standing rule, actually, not a rule, but just something I've always done. If it's somebody's first time, it's my treat, right? I would much rather have you have the experience, find out, maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but you get the experience without any of the nonsense of having to pay or having to be uncomfortable or all that. So,
oh, sure. I tell people, I say, we'll go to the range, you buy ice cream afterwards.
Ice cream's I should have gotten ice cream.
I know.
Why didn't I think of that? I like ice cream. And so we went shooting, and that same stupid smile that was on my face at 12 years old was now on his face. And ever since then, he's slowly, he's bought guns. His attitude has changed. It hasn't been an overnight process. Then I used to hear about, well, why do you need an AR-15? Why do you need 30-round magazines? And over time, through education and exposure, that very anti-gun attitude that was present when I was younger is gone, completely eviscerated. And it's been really eye-opening to me, going through that, experiencing it, and then transitioning into what I've been doing for a living and passion, of how do you convert people into maybe not advocates, but at the very least fence sitters, or people that go, you know what, that's not a bad thing, but it's not for me.
Right, which it's totally cool. Like it's like when you're young and you have young kids, and you tell your kids they have to have a no thank you bite. Right? Yeah. Like, let's go to the range, let's give it a try, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. It's the process of elimination, right? Yeah. Calculatus eliminatus.
So I graduate college, I have a degree in political science. What the heck am I going to do with a degree in political science?
Dude, I don't even know what a degree in political science is.
That makes two of us, and I have one of those. So I was working in a restaurant. I'd grown up working in restaurants. I was working in a restaurant. Well, this is not a sustainable career choice, but it's a way to put off life. And my dad and uncle were lawyers. They started their own law firm. They were general practitioners. He had kind of been pushing me towards law school. And finally, I'm like, you know what, fine, I'll apply. At the very least, it's a way to put off life for a couple more years while I figure out what I want to be when I grow up.
Right, maybe I don't have to wait tables anymore.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Right. So I get accepted to law school. I go to law school. I'm a night student, so I'm working during the day. I'm going to school at night. It's a 4-year instead of a 3-year program. And I'm going into my last year. And at this point, I'm going, I'm going to be graduating soon, taking the bar exam, presumably passing, and it would probably be good to have some experience so when I go look for a job doing something, I can say, hey, I at least had an internship. So I was active on 2 forums. I'm very active on AR15.com, but also there was a Pennsylvania gun forum, and on the Pennsylvania gun forum, I kept seeing this lawyer's name repeated over and over, Joshua Prince. So I look him up. Turns out he's about an hour away. So I send an email, and in my email, I say, hey, I'm a law student. I'm going to be graduating at the end of next year. I would really like to talk to you about an internship opportunity. And oh, by the way, I don't think I want to practice law. and I like firearms. Somewhere in there was like, I like guns. There's something that I really do enjoy.
Right.
But, I basically say, I don't want to practice law. And what I get is an email back from his father, who it's his dad's firm, and his dad says, well, here's a recommendation for you. Never tell anybody that again. And, I don't think the internship thing is going to be something we can do.
Right. I don't think. Let's see. We want to come work with you. We want you. I want you to work with me and shape me, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to get into this.
Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
There were a couple more emails exchanged, and ultimately what I ended up with was an internship at that firm. It was a very good arrangement for everybody, and it was a place where I felt like I fit in. Josh was an amazing mentor while I was an intern, and I ultimately ended up being able to, before I graduated, talk about if there was a place for me, and that's where I worked for 5 years. And
that's cool.
So I entered the practice of law. I'm doing some game law, some things with the Pennsylvania Game Commission, and I'm also working with Josh on a lot of Second Amendment stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing FFL revocations, determination letter requests, so industry representation stuff, and individual things like, gun trusts were really big at the time prior to ATF 41F, and, some civil rights things, which ultimately later became a lot of 2A as applied challenges that, have been with me ever since, actually. And some other interesting, civil rights things, mental health commitments, stuff like that were related to firearms. So I spent 5 years practicing law there. And I just didn't love, and I still don't to this day, love actually practicing law. It's something I can do. It's something I understand. It's something that I'm told I'm okay at. Some people think I'm really good, and I know from working with the people I work with, I don't hold a candle in comparison to a lot of these people,
Yeah.
particularly their writing. It truly is amazing how well written some people are. And so I was starting to look for what's a way out. This is not necessarily what I think I want to do for the rest of my life, practicing law. And at that point, there was an opportunity offered to me at FPC, where I was working as outside counsel on a couple of cases.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it. Well, what am I going to be doing here? And there wasn't really a clear answer. And we had more conversations, and ultimately I said, cool, let's go do that. And that's where I spent the last 3 years of my life. Working for FPC, and ultimately, running the programmatic division there, in addition to several other things. I wore several different hats, but I was given an opportunity to kind of really look at the legal landscape and strategically plan cases and work with a number of other attorneys, a number of organizations, and a number of individuals to bring a lot of the lawsuits that you guys have seen over the last 3 years that FPC obviously was involved with, that the Second Amendment Foundation was involved with, even NRA invited them to join in some cases, and various state groups, all kinds of different stuff, assault weapons bans, age-based restrictions, the COVID shutdowns, which were really big and onerous, and just a lot of stuff. So I guess that's the real quick, not really quick, but that's the down and dirty as to how I got into it. It was all by sheer, I don't want to say sheer luck, but it was a door opened and I walked through it. Somebody took a bet on me and rolled the dice, and I guess I showed them that I was good enough to stick around. And for that, I'm forever appreciative of all the opportunities that everybody has given me along the way, because I wouldn't be where I am without those. And I guess there was some hard work and then some sheer dumb luck thrown in there.
Gotcha. Now, you ran for the NRA Board of Directors, and you got nominated?
So I ran for the NRA Board of Directors 3 times, and I was nominated via petition all 3 times. And the way that came about was while I was working at the law firm, we had a booth at the Great American Outdoor Show in Pennsylvania. And if you've never been to the Great American Outdoor Show, it's an 11-day trade show. Not trade show, it's open to the public, but it's an 11-day show open to the public 2 or 3 weeks right after SHOT Show happens. It's massive. There's all kinds of hunting expeditions that are being sold in one hall. There's a fishing hall, there's an archery hall, and then there's the room that has some gun manufacturers and other things. Yeah. And so we had a booth, and I was standing at the booth, and one day Tim Knight and Sean Maloney, who were NRA Board of Directors at the time, come walking up, and they say, "Hey, we've been reading your stuff. We really like it. We think that you might be a good addition to the board. We would like to talk to you about running."
Was this when people were trying to get rid of Wayne?
This was before. This was before any of the stuff that's been out there.
Right.
And so I said, all right, sounds interesting. Like, tell me more. And we had more discussions about it. And I said, okay, yeah, like, why not? So, at the time, I was, doing YouTube stuff with John Patton on the Gun Collective. Yeah. And he was extremely not only supportive but helpful in giving me a platform to actually reach people. And so I ran via petition. And the way you run, there's two ways to get your name on the ballot. One is you submit your name, or somebody submits your name to the nominating committee, and they look at it and they say, cool, we like this person, we're going to nominate them to a spot on the ballot. Or alternatively, you run via petition. And in order to do that, you need, I forget what the number of signatures is, it got bumped when the bylaws got tweaked a little bit, but essentially you need X number of signatures of members who have either been an annual member for 5 years consistently, or life or better members. Yeah. So that's how I ran all 3 times. The first time, obviously, I didn't win. Second time, I said, that's cool. I ran for the 76th seat at the annual meeting. I lost by not very many votes, relatively speaking. And it was a learning experience. And then I decided, okay, let me try again. Maybe enough people don't know who I am. So I gave it another shot second time. I ran for the 76th seat and lost again by a small amount. In Dallas, I think it was. And then the third time I ran, I really didn't want to, but I felt obligated to all the people that had told me over the last 2 years that I joined the NRA just to vote for you. I signed up as a life member. I said, all right, if all these people believe in what I'm saying, I at least owe it to them to give it one more shot. Sure. Didn't win. And I said, cool, like, I'm done. And then this was around the time I was starting to talk with FPC about going to work there. Yeah. Tim Knight, Sean Maloney, and several other directors resigned, and based on where I finished in the election, I was next up for a seat, and I respectfully declined because I didn't feel that going to work at another organization, I could sit on the board and fulfill that fiduciary duty in a manner that I felt was appropriate, and all that. So that's where that ended. As I've said many times, I wish them the absolute best with everything, and I hope that they are successful ultimately, because I do believe that the work that they do is important, much like a lot of other groups, and that's that. Very cool. Very cool. So, what are you doing now? Like, I'm unemployed. I'm underemployed. I'm freelancing. I decided recently to part ways and go about. I needed a change in my life, so I'm right now just kind of figuring out what the next step is for me. I don't know what it is. I've thought of everything from leaving the space entirely to what else is in the space to how can I perhaps work in the actual gun portion of it, or the gun and accessories portion of it. Right. So nothing's really off the table per se, but I don't have a clear path as to that's where I'm going and that's what I'm going to do. It's an interesting place to be. Yeah, and single, no kids? I have no children. Yeah, I've got 4 dogs. Okay. 4 dogs? All right. That's a lot of dogs. That is a lot of dogs. Yeah. That's a lot of dog hair, a lot of vacuuming. Yeah, they do shed, and it's just a lot to keep track of. There was, there's a puppy that was a COVID puppy that came up from Alabama, and she has her front leg is deformed. It looks like a little chicken wing, so she's basically a tripod, and she's ferocious. She chases the 90-pound dog around the house, and the 90-pound dog could kill her, like, no problem whatsoever. Right. She chases him and corners him in his crate, and candidly, we're all scared of her. The 3-legged dog. Yeah. We're the tripod. We're afraid of the tripod. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I was asking about the family situation, because it's it'd be tougher to do if you had, not that you don't have responsibilities, but you have other life responsibilities. I've got life responsibilities, that's for sure, but I'm in a very fortunate position where I have a little bit of time to figure out what exactly it is I want to do, and I'm doing side work. The nice thing about being a lawyer is you can find work, and that's exactly what I've done. You know, I do some representation for a friend's company. You know, I've basically been in their in-house counsel ever since they started, so there's some stuff there. I have other friends who need, you know, contracts and other things that I help them out with.
That's cool.
And then most recently, you know, I was approached by Alan Gottlieb at SAF. There was an individual that had filed a pro se case in West Virginia. He's an 18-year-old kid challenging the federal prohibition on his ability to purchase handguns and handgun ammunition.
Gotcha. I would love to get into that. Pro se, what does pro se mean?
So pro se is when you're unrepresented and you're just you're representing yourself.
Okay.
And you
probably
know,
not a good idea for someone under 21.
It's usually not a good idea for most people.
For anybody?
Even lawyers, for that matter, that go and represent themselves. Like that's actually probably the worst client you could have, yourself.
Right.
And so these, you know, he filed the lawsuit. I looked at the complaint he filed. It was a lot of courts have forms that you can just fill out. What are you complaining about? He sued almost. I mean, other than the West Virginia Attorney General, he sued all the right parties. So you know, like. But he's an 18-year-old kid that's not a lawyer, and like, so Alan called me and said, "Hey, he talked to him, and he would like to, you know, take over the lawsuit for this kid." So I called the kid up, very responsive, which is having had the experience of myself and then the people that were working with me at FPC trying to contact 18 to 20-year-olds for a lot of the cases that came out of there for 18 to 20 stuff. 18 to 20-year-olds are awful to deal with because they don't call you back, they don't respond to emails, text messages are incredibly hit or miss. I don't do TikTok, so I don't know, maybe that would be the better way, or whatever the new cool thing is, but I was very impressed with how responsive this kid was, and he said, "Hey, I've got a friend who would also like to be a plaintiff," and that kid is incredibly responsive in emails and in phone calls, and I told them both. I said, "Listen, like, I don't need you to be Johnny on the spot necessarily, but I need you to be reasonable in it," and they've been pretty darn lickety-split.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I know with my kids are wicked early 20s, really early, and you send them a text message, you're like, "Hey, hello, hello." You know, it comes up, it says "Dad." You might want to check that out. Maybe get back to me once in a while.
Yeah, it's well, hey, look, I get it. People call me and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get to it," and then 5 days go by and I'm like, "Oh, crap, right. I should call you back."
Right. Now, this is really interesting that this is what you talked about at the Gun Rights Policy Conference this year.
Yes.
Was focusing on the 18 to 20-year-olds and things that they can purchase and buy and possess and carry. And this is a whole can of worms. Like, Bruin's going to open up. Bruin's going to, like, the De Bruin decision is going to open up everything and probably eliminate a ton of stuff, right? This is kind of what people are talking about.
Theoretically, yes. If we're looking at it from a very academic standpoint, and particularly in this context as it relates to 18 to 20-year-olds, the answer should be very clearly yes. You have the text of the Second Amendment, which in Heller, they already did the textual analysis. Right. They already did a historical analysis. We know the history from research that individuals like David Kopel and Joe Greenlee did, and they wrote a law review article on it, that, you know, at the time of the founding, which is the relevant historical time period, individuals between 18 and 20 were not only you know, required by law for militia purposes, but non-militia purposes to possess and bear arms for defense of, you know, the community themselves. And so when you're looking at it through the lens of what Bruin said and what really Heller had said, and Bruin just came back and clarified, like, "Hey, no, you've been doing it wrong for the past almost decade and a half," but it's the text as informed by history and tradition. So the text of the Second Amendment says the people, and the people in Heller was all Americans. Right. All Americans. So then that means, okay, it's presumptively covered under the Second Amendment. We need to look at the history, and it's the government's burden to show that there's a historical basis to prevent these individuals that's rooted in our nation's history and tradition that would prevent 18 and through 20-year-olds from being able to purchase and possess firearms and ammunition. And it's just not there. So based on that, in an academic, clean room, yeah, there's no way that any of this stands. Now, will a court try to find some way to be creative about it and sidestep it? Maybe, but I don't know what they're going to find in the historical record that's going to support that.
Right.
And the Supreme Court was very clear that one outlier here or an outlier there isn't enough for you to say, like, we can stand alone on that.
That is really interesting. It's I guess where I think about things is we have decided that an 18-year-old is an adult, and I'm going to use air quotes when I say that, right? And if we're going to let 18-year-olds be adults and do adult things, then let them do adult things, you know. And these are things that adults do. And I realized I was a conservative, and I think I'm a small C conservative, and I'd like to think I'm a little bit more of a libertarian, because I'm like, let people do what they want to do as long as they're not bothering someone else, not harming someone else. You know, it should be okay.
Yeah.
But my attitude is it comes back to the abortion issue, which I know isn't quite gun related, but my attitude is if a 14-year-old girl can have an abortion without telling her parents, then on the way home she should buy a bottle of whiskey, get some cigarettes, get some scratch tickets, apply for a credit card, get a gun, drive herself home from the clinic, and do, you know, get credit cards and take out mortgages and all this sort of stuff, because this is an adult decision. And if you're at 14, you're making adult decisions, then hey, welcome aboard. Become an adult. It sucks. You're not going to like it by the time you're 16. Welcome to adulthood. You know.
Yeah, so the Constitution's really clear on this point. There's no age restriction baked into the Second Amendment.
Right, and you were pointing out that George Washington said 18-year-olds?
Yeah, you know, you have writings from the time of the founding, from not only the founders, but other people who were intelligent or, you know, doing things related to government at the time that was saying that these people are perfect for the militia and militia service, and they make good soldiers. And on top of all that, the drafters of the Constitution and subsequent amendments baked in age requirements for certain things. So they knew how to restrict things based on age. Like, you want to be president, 35, representative, 25, senator, 30, vote, 18. So if they know how to do it, they could have certainly come in there in the Second Amendment and said, well, you need to be 25 years old for this to apply to you. And They very clearly did not do that.
That's pretty cool. I wish more people would see this and realize this.
Well, it's a controversial thing in the sense of, if you look at how these restrictions have been justified, it's all been based on social science. You know, Congress passed a law that bans 18 through 20-year-olds from buying a handgun. Why? Well, it's based on allegedly, you know, violence. And that's a social science thing. That's not a constitutional thing.
Right.
And the Constitution, unfortunately for the legislature, pulls that judgment out of their hands. That debate was settled when the amendment was written and put into the Constitution.
Do you think how long do you think it'll take before it sticks?
That's an interesting question, and I think the best thing I could offer for it is something where I had a discussion with someone else, and it honestly went back to the abortion thing. And I'll use the example to kind of set the stage with it. So, one of the things that some gun rights advocates, or not gun rights, civil rights advocates related to guns do is they say, okay, well, you know, you say on this side of the aisle that guns kill this many people, but you're having abortions and you're killing this many people.
Right.
The problem with the argument there is that you're speaking two different languages, because the people that might be pro-choice or that are pro-choice might not believe that that is a life at the time, whereas somebody who is pro-life believes that that is in fact a life. And you're not talking on the same wavelength. Regardless of how you feel about the issue, you're just not talking on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of applies in this context, in the sense of, you have people who are having an emotional response that's based on how they feel, and you have people who are trying to have the conversation or argument with them based on, this is what the facts or logic is behind that. And facts and logic are never going to meet emotion in a conversation where they go, oh, we understand one another. And I think because of that, there's always going to be a disconnect. You can cite statistics and you can tell people facts all day long, but if I feel a certain way, unless I'm willing to look at those and consider it and have that change how I feel, there's no point. You're never going to get anywhere, and you're just going to end up yelling at one another,
getting aggravated and frustrated, and probably saying things you may regret or may not regret.
Possibly,
right? losing your cool a little bit. I used to think this. When people compare putting someone to death versus an abortion, my attitude was the person that we're putting to death did something really bad. They took another person's life, or whatever. This is why we're doing this. But the innocent unborn child hasn't committed any crimes, and I've, since I've become a gun guy and hanging out with more gun folks and believing more in personal liberties and personal freedoms, my attitude is, it's not my call for you to. It's not my call for you to have an abortion. Like, it's not my decision.
That's a debate I just flat out stay out of.
It's like, I don't. This is what I always tell folks. I don't drink tequila because of the way other people behave when they have it. I've had a couple of bad experiences when I was young, but that's not like, I've decided that's not for me, and that's not my decision. And if you want to do it, that's fine. If you find yourself in a situation and you're pregnant, you don't want to move forward with that, then that's your decision. It's not mine. Like, it's not my call. And I have one of my sisters. I like to say her first son attended her high school graduation. And of course, I'm sure at the time I thought it was crazy, and I thought it was ridiculous. But I don't look at my nephew and say, I wished your mother would have killed you, or aborted you, or anything like that, because that wasn't my decision in her life. That was her decision, and that's what she needed to do, and that's her life. Like, that's how her life played out. You know what I mean?
I'm a pretty big proponent of, like, kind of do what you want as long as you're not harming others, and I think I think when you look at politically everything that's going on, whether it's Republican or it's Democrat, it's a lot of, we want to tell you how to live your life based on our values, and it's not so much like, hey, as long as you're not harming anyone else and you're not, like, fucking with kids, pardon my French,
French, but that's okay.
Just kind of go live your life.
Yeah, and live your life. Like, do what you want to do, just don't bother me.
Yeah, and I think when you take everything and then you remove it back to these concepts of liberty and stuff, well, liberty is inherently kind of dangerous, right? It's really fascinating to see how individuals, mostly on the left side of the political spectrum, are now attacking all modes of speech that they deem offensive or anything like that. That's the exact kind of speech that you should be standing up to protect.
Absolutely.
It may be abhorrent. It may be incredibly offensive. It may, it may just be stuff that's terrible, but you have the right to say it. It doesn't mean you have to condone it being said.
Right.
And unfortunately, what's going to happen is when you start to restrict it and then you start to erase it from history by editing things and removing it from books and releasing that the authors never intended, you're changing and altering history. And ultimately, what you're going to end up with on top of all that is you're going to end up in a position where you're going to restrict people's ability to speak out about things because that's not in vogue anymore, or it's not woke to say, like, hey, I think this is wrong, regardless of whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise.
I love having deep conversations like this. It makes me feel smart.
I didn't know that I was having a deep conversation.
Well, I mean, this all
you
this
should
stuff.
Be the lawyer.
I don't know about that. Not that smart. Right.
Well, you should see who goes to law school. I mean, hell, I got out of there.
I used to joke and say, I went to a music school, and we're like, the way you graduate is to make sure the checks clear every semester. And that's kind of how it worked. All right, well, this has been great. We're back to where we need to be, and we're going to drop you off, and you can continue on with the rest of the weekend. And I think I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Anyway,
makes two of us.
I know, right? Thank you so much for being on the show. Sit tight, hang on. Anything you want to plug? How can people find you? Or if you want them to find you?
Yeah, you can't.
So that's the thing.
That's
so
the best part.
Amanda's like, Adam wants to be on the show. I'm like, all right. Oh, we're not Facebook friends. Oh, he's not on Facebook.
Yeah,
I
ditched all that stuff. So there's you want to plug, right? On Netflix, there's a documentary, and I had done this before I watched the documentary, but it's called The Social Dilemma.
Okay, I thought it was Breaking Bad. That's the documentary.
Well, we're not in New Mexico, unfortunately for us. And so I watched it, and it really just reinforced my decision to get off all that stuff. Right?
All right. What was it called?
The Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma. Okay.
It literally, what I chose to get off it was I found that when I wasn't doing something, I was wasting time, and I've taken that time and actually turned it into this productive stuff.
That's cool.
And so, it's all just toxic, right? Like, I don't need to be in an echo chamber, and I sure as heck don't need to see people telling me that I'm wrong all the time, or all the other nonsense that comes along with it. There's some very good things, I guess I should say. Like, it has been very good as far as you can see some really cool stuff, and learn some neat recipes or whatever. But anyway, so I got off all that stuff. You can't find me anywhere. I'm just doing it.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, and it's good. But what I guess I would plug is, or what I would say is, if you are somebody who's watching this and you do want to support some gun rights organization, the one thing I would tell you is, I'm not going to tell you who to support. What I would tell you is, go look at the work they're doing. And if you like the work they're doing and you think that it represents your views or values, give them some money. Particularly now that everybody's getting into litigation. Not that lobbying was free by any means, but filing lawsuits isn't cheap. And what I would say is, go give them some dollars, tell your friends about them, have them check out their work, but don't just blindly support someone because somebody says this is the organization. Like, actually take some time to do some research into it yourself. And I know that's a high barrier to entry, but it's worth the 20 minutes of your time.
Cool.
That's what I got.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hang tight. Yeah, I love it when people are like, all right, listen, we're done.
Whoa, you said we're dropping you off, and then it's like, hold on a second, actually, don't get out of the car.
Oh, gee.
You're stuck.
I have to be clear with my directions. Oh my God. Listen, thank you guys for watching the show. Again, I don't know how many times I have to thank you, but thank you for being on the show.
At least one more.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you guys for watching the show. If you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, please support them. That could be someone that you spend some money with. It's $150 for a lifetime membership. SAF.org is the website. You can check out all of your favorite pro-freedom podcasts at SDRN.us. That's the Self-Defense Radio Network. And if you enjoyed the show and you're watching on the YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, and please share the show with your people. Hit the notification bell. Do all that really cool stuff. And this is how we get the Stagecoach across America. All right, one more. Thanks for being on, man.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Easy peasy. Thanks.
Yep.